Hi, my name is Tim Borelli, and this morning we are going to talk about how, as a lead, you can give the best feedback possible to your team, and how, as a team member, you can get the best feedback for yourself. So, why listen to me about this stuff? I started at Volition in 1998. I worked from an entry-level animator to lead animator, and became the company's first tech animator. I watched the studio grow from about 20 people to well over 200, so I kind of was around for a lot of growing pains and culture and the ability to give feedback efficiently. After about 12 years, my wife and I wanted out of the Midwest, so we wound up in Seattle, and I moved onto Fifth Cell, where I was hired as the lead animator onto an existing team. And this was at a company that only ever hired fresh out-of-school kids. So there was a challenge in coming onto an existing team, as well as working with both management and the team with senior people. So I learned how to manage up and down. And speaking of downs, we had layoffs. I got laid off over the phone at GDC while I was running the animation bootcamp. I did a micro talk about it that I'll talk about later. I went freelance for a while, did a short stint at a startup where I left because it wasn't a good culture fit. Went back to doing freelance for people like Mike Bithell and others. But eventually I decided that I liked health insurance. And I hated paying for it. So I wound up at Tekla, where I'm there currently. They're in San Francisco, but I work from home. And that brings itself, in and of itself, a different kind of challenges for getting and receiving feedback, not just on your work, but also from a professional standpoint. So with all of that, I've seen all sorts of feedback. I've seen the blind side where, you think you're doing great, and then your annual review where you never, hear anything the entire year. You're told, oh, by the way, you've been fucking this up for the entire year. I've seen the game of telephone where you can't actually talk directly to your reports. You have to talk to a project manager who then tells your report the feedback you have for them. And I've also given and received surprise feedback. And actually, the last time I gave surprise feedback was what kind of jump-started me to change the way I did it and the way I handled it at the studio I was at. So, why are we here? Because annual reviews must die. They are terrible. And I wanted to call this talk that and talk only about that, but I was given feedback that I shouldn't. So, what is it really? What are we really going to do? We're going to be talking about killing the annual review, but really how to make your company's annual review process. This thing is terrible. Can you guys all hear me like this? Are you good? All right, fuck this microphone. Are we going to be good on recording with my voice like this? Do I need, if I'm here, are we good? All right, I'm going to sorry, I'm short, so, you'll see the top of my head. It's a nice, shiny head. All right, so we're going to talk about how, as a lead, you can make your company's annual review process work better for you and your team. We're going to do the flip side, how to get better feedback as an employee from your lead or your lead's lead or your studio in general. And then we'll have some Q&A. So, what are we going to talk about here? Annual review processes suck. They take too long. They're often filled with stale feedback. They're not always aimed at the team member's growth as an artist, programmer, or whatever, and they're often just used as tick boxes against a confusing metric. But we need them, right? Not really. A good manager should not need to give an annual review. You should be giving that feedback throughout the year to your team member. What it really should be is a recap of all the feedback that you've given throughout the year to your team members. There should be no surprises, just a collection of information that you and your team member already know. But you got to get paid. And they exist at a lot of companies and are used to determine your compensation and promotion. Chances are you're not going to be the one to make them go away. So while they suck, we can't get rid of them. So we got to make them work for you and your team. And this first part, we're going to talk about how to do that. All right, first, being a human being. I couldn't think of a good thing to call my process, so I just gave it a clever title. Being a human being means being relatable, being approachable. Don't be a dick. Remember that as the lead, you're no better than your team. And in fact, you really should be surrounding yourself with people better than you. So the sooner you realize that as a human being and as a lead on your team, that they are the ones who are supposed to be better, you're in a lot better shape. Doing weekly one-on-ones. You want to create a safe space for your team members where you talk about their progress, your progress, the studio, anything they want to talk about. Those feed into monthly recaps, which will then filter into your annual review. So, being a human, right? Be approachable, be relatable. Your team is number one. They matter more than the project that you're on. They matter more than your boss. A lead's job is their team first and foremost. So the sooner you can establish that with your team, the better off you'll be. You want to be friendly. You don't have to be best friends with your team members, but it helps to at least be friendly with them. Know at least enough about them so that they feel comfortable talking to you and talking to you frankly. For example, you could have a normally high performer who over a number of months, their performance starts dipping, and you want them to feel comfortable enough with you to tell you if they have something going on outside of work that might be affecting them so that you can help them adjust their workload across the team so that they can get through whatever they're getting through in order to come back and perform as well as they can. Making sure that it's okay to fail. You shouldn't just let them know that it's okay to fail. You should plan for it to happen. I generally schedule a team member to have time to fuck up constantly, especially if it's something new, it's something that they're doing for the first time. But even if it's something that they've done 100 times, sometimes we have bad days, we have bad weeks. You want to make sure that you have enough buffer time in order for them to screw up, learn from it, and then come back stronger. For me, I had an animator who wanted to turn into a tech animator. And so I gave him a deadline of 3 months. I said, look, in 3 months, if you can switch our pipeline over from Max to Maya, because we wanted to switch to Maya, you can be a tech animator. I actually gave him 4 months, but I didn't tell him he had 4 months. I told him 3 months, because I thought he could do it in 2 months. And he was going along pretty well, and then he got stuck on some things. And for like a week, he was stuck. And he was like, man, I can't do this. He's like, I'm not going to make the 3 months. I keep screwing up this thing. I don't know how to handle it. And so I just pulled him aside. I showed him the files from the last project we were on, a rig that I had worked on. It had like 250 iterations. And I said, 249 of these are where I fucked up. And 250 is where I got it right for you guys finally. And he looked at it, he's like, all right, good. I understand that it's okay to screw up. You understand that I can screw up. And you've screwed up, and now I feel like less of a screw up. It was nice. And, we hugged. We didn't hug. He wasn't a hugger. Remember that everyone is different. Some people need structure, and others don't think they do. But when you're giving feedback to a team and the bigger your team is, the better it is to have structure for everyone. That doesn't mean that you're going to go and talk to them in list form and kind of check the boxes on today you are doing really well in the communication matrix box, but you're not really doing great in the efficiency box. You don't worry about all that shit. You just talk to them in a way that as you get to know them, they will react to being spoken to and give them feedback. Or spoken with, not really spoken to. And for example, that particular tech animator, he needed everything in a list form, so I'd give him everything in a list form. But we had an animator on that team who just wanted to have conversation. So we just talked about whatever it was, and I would kind of pluck out the things that I figured were things that she needed me to address or that I could help her address. All right, so last thing, give credit where credit is due. Don't single out team members when they're doing an amazing job in front of the entire studio. Credit the team, because chances are that team member, while they are the one who did the finished product that everybody loves, the entire team was there helping and supporting along the way. And they know that they did that, and you want to make sure that everybody else knows that they did that. The individual credit is left for individual performance sessions, like what we're going to talk about now. Weekly one-on-ones. So the number one thing with weekly one-on-ones is that you do not skip them ever. Ever. I have walked out of meetings. I have refused meeting requests. I've told my boss to fuck off. And I've done everything I can to make sure that these one-on-ones happen. You want to make sure, like I said before, the team is number one. And making sure that you make it to these one-on-ones every week will show them that, and it will pay it back for you eventually. So in these one-on-ones, the first thing you do, recap last week. Go over the stuff you talked about. Whatever concerns they had, if you were able to address them, talk about those. Whatever feedback they needed to address, we talk about that. Anything that you, as the lead, needed to follow up on for them, you talk about that. And then any feedback that they gave you that you could act upon, you go over. The one-on-ones are a two-way street. I'll talk about that in a second. Then, this week's stuff. This is where they talk to you. You just shut up and let them talk about whatever their concerns are, whatever questions they want to ask, and basically be a listener. Sometimes people just need to be able to hear themselves talk in order to work out whatever is bothering them themselves, having you there in a safe space to let them do that is really, really important. It empowers them to feel like they can solve their own problems, but if they can't, they can ask you. And this is also where you give them updates on the project, the studio, and if they have any performance improvements they can make, you talk about it then, but you always let them kind of drive that whole conversation. And then feedback, it's a two-way street. It goes both ways. This is a time for you to ask them how you're doing so that you can do better for them and for the team. I'm moving around a lot. Sorry, I like him a thing. He's doing a thing over there. And then finally at the end, an email follow-up, right? During the one-on-ones, take notes. Unless you have perfect recall, you are not going to remember everything. You're going to walk out of that room and you're a lead. You're going to get pulled into something else, or you're going to have another one-on-one right afterwards, or it's right before lunch, or it's the end of the day. So take notes during that meeting. Put them into an email. Have a form. My form was what we talked about, what their action items are, what my action items are, and what resolved items were from the previous week. If you keep it in a form, which it seems formal, it is really easy to digest. You can read them every week, and your team will start getting used to seeing feedback kind of structured in that way, and it'll be a really quick read, and they won't freak out about seeing something like that. You don't want to have like one-on-ones where it's just kind of a mess of notes or whatever, and you talk about it and you never do anything. And then when there's something that you have to track, like they are not performing well, all of a sudden they get an email, that is going to really kind of like, it kind of throws people off. It threw me off when it happened to me, so I try not to do that. All right, so those one-on-ones go into a monthly recap. This is basically a compilation of all of the one-on-one notes. All those, that structure that you sent to them every week, you put that into a monthly recap. That recap fills into your annual review format that your studio has, right? You're not getting rid of the annual review, so we have to figure out a way for it to make it work for us. So monthly recaps start becoming the annual review. You'll compile those notes and any other metrics that you've talked about that fit into your annual review form. Everybody's studio has something different, and you go over those. Go over the improvements if they had any that had to be done. Like, go over how they work to improve and ask if you yourself as the lead need to do anything more to help them with those improvements. You want to concentrate on them. And with all of this talk about improvements and everything, make sure that you never say you or I, you say we, because you're both in this together, so you should really be talking like it. Then go over their accomplishments. People forget what they did 4 weeks ago. Most human beings, we concentrate on the negative. So going over what they had done over the last 4 weeks is a good morale booster. I had one animator who, the beginning of a month, kicked ass on a character. She got, in 2 weeks, a whole motion step blocked in. She cleared up a lot of dependencies for designers and programmers. And then during the week prior to our monthly recap, she was stuck on a really complicated character. So her one-on-one prior to the recap, and then during that recap, she was really down and really kind of like trying to figure out how she could get better. She thought all of her work sucked. And I just said, dude, you got all this done at the beginning of the month. And she was like, holy shit, that was this month. Oh, yeah. And then her demeanor changed immediately. She realized, all right, it's just a minor blip, and I can get past this. So while you're talking about all this, write down anything that you might have missed, any other concerns they have, because you want to be able to address those as well. And then allow the team member to point out anything you might have missed during all of those one-on-ones that you're putting into this monthly recap, because you will have missed things, and you want them to feel comfortable with bringing those up in case there are things that they thought they told you or did tell you and you forgot about, or they didn't word in a way that felt like it was something you needed to worry about. And then turn the tables. Once their part is done, it's time for them to tell you how you did. Talk about what you as a lead have tried to do better as a result of their feedback, and ask them where you're lagging behind and how you can, as a lead, can do better for them and their team. You did this during the one-on-ones, but now this is a time at the end of the month for them to look at the entire month and see where you actually did pick up for them. I had one animator who, for a long time, we would get rigs, and I would test out with posing. I worked with the animation team to make sure that the characters could actually do the poses that I was asking of the team. And then I got really busy. There were a ton of fucking meetings. We were crunching, and so I stopped testing the rigs. And I had one animator pull me aside during one of these recaps and say, dude, you're asking us to do stuff with these rigs that we just cannot do. You need to start testing them again. and we kind of like hashed out what I needed to do, what kind of time I could spend on it, and I started doing it, and their work got better. I knew what I could expect of them from the rigs. Their communication with the rigging department got a whole lot better because it wasn't a lot of frustration of me saying, make these poses, the rigging department saying, the character can't do that, where's Tim? And then, you know, we kind of got all that ironed out, and all it took was one guy feeling comfortable enough to tell me that I was fucking up. All right. And then once you're done, email and follow up immediately. You want to sign off on the recap and add it to the annual review form. And now you're 1/12 of the way to being free of the annual review. Kinda. Not really. I don't really like calling this the annual review anymore. It makes it sound like you only get feedback once a year, which is actually what happens to some people, and we don't want that anymore. So it is no longer the annual review. We're going to call it the annual recap. It should really be a year in review. All those one-on-ones, all those monthly recaps, this is just a compilation of all of that. So you get your annual review from email from management. Normally what happens, you get this review, the form goes to the team member, they fill it out right away, right? Because you're the team member, you want to get your raise right away. You want to find out, you know, if you're getting a promotion. It goes to your lead. Your lead might fill it out right away. They might wait a week. They might be in meetings. They might be on vacation. It might just take a long time for them to get it done. So let's say a couple weeks later, they fill theirs out, and then they send it in. Then it gets sent in, and you're waiting for management to read it. And during all that time, you know, they might be in the same boat as you are as a lead. They're not in the office. They have 20 of these things to go over. They want to meet monthly in order to do it instead of doing it right away. So what we're aiming to do here is get this email in, get this review compiled, and get it sent back in a day. So once you get that review, the review email from management, send the team member the compiled monthly recaps. You should be sending them to them every month anyway as a part of, you know, following up with email. But do it anyway as the actual annual review. Then set a meeting with the team member that day if you can. Go over the monthly recaps and bring up any discrepancies. They can bring up anything that you feel like they feel like you've missed, and vice versa. And then during the meeting, you'll either sign off on the compiled review or sign off on the changes that need to be made, and then work to make those within a day. Then you review the expectations of what the team member hopes to get and what the lead thinks is feasible. That's with promotion. That's in some studios, the leads no compensation, so they can talk about that. This really varies, and so you just basically have to know what your studio allows you to talk about and what they don't. For me, if I'm planning on recommending a promotion, I let my team member know, but I also make sure that they know if I don't make the final call, there might not be the budget for it. But at the least, I like to make sure that they know I know what their value is, so that they can at least advocate for themselves if they feel like you aren't doing a good enough job. Then when it's done, submit it. You get it in as quickly as possible, hopefully within days of that annual review email, so that you can get that whole situation turned around as fast as possible for you. All right. So, results. Your team will have effective feedback. You'll have better team dynamics because your team will know you work for them. You'll have accountability on both ends for any feedback. This is super important especially for you as the lead. If you have somebody who needs to improve or is doing really well, you have a paper trail of both of those. And if you need to improve, there's a paper trail of your report or your team member telling you to improve. So if you're not and they want to complain about you to your boss, they are able to. And you should always allow your team members to complain about you to your boss, because the only way that you are going to get better as a lead for your team is if you know, and sometimes you're not going to react to it unless it comes from above. Not always the best way to be, but sometimes that's what it takes. Faster review submissions and turnarounds. Like I mentioned, like sometimes the studio management meets only monthly for compensation reviews. So if you get your review email like a week before that review, and you take a week and a day to get yours in, you're waiting another month before they'll even look at your annual review to talk about your compensation. Most places will do retroactive pay, but I mean, still, like people like getting their money right away. So we should try and make that as fast as possible so that you can. And finally, professional growth for you and your team, right? All of that accountability, all of those like consistent reviews, all of those regular feedback sessions will help you grow as a lead and help your team grow as team members and ultimately make you all more productive. For me, when I started this at one of the companies that I worked at, within the first year, everyone got a promotion, everyone got a raise, and they were all on track and happier to figure out how to be better employees and team members and people on a project than they had in the past. And they all, I'm kind of bragging, but they all told me that it was the best review process they ever had, but it's probably all because they got paid more. I'm not going to lie about that. So, yeah. All right. So, I'm going to take a little water break here. So we're going to go on to this next section. I'm going a little quick because I have a lot. Before I go, does anybody have any questions about that first half?
Why weekly?
Why weekly? Yeah. As opposed to longer or shorter?
2 weeks.
Weekly because for me weekly was it's a standard unit of time where if you normally have weekly meetings like team meetings, you have leads meetings and everything, it's easy to fit a weekly meeting into all of that. And for me I had experimented with, the question was why weekly? I'd experimented with monthly and biweekly, and those were really easy to just skip. If it's something that you're used to doing every week, you tend to do it every week. So it helped out a lot.
How many people do you have with your doing this process?
So this process, my teams, let me think, the first time when I first started doing this, I had a team of 4, and then it expanded to a team of 8. The team of 4, it was really easy to handle. The team of 8, it got really, it didn't scale as well as I'd like, which I think that's where you were going with that. Scale, I think the ideal team size, I wouldn't go higher than 8. And I had actually had talked to our management about that and said, look, if we get bigger than this, I might need to have like a sub lead, or like I was pushing to be animation director, and I was like, I'll make one of them a lead, and then they can do it, and I will train them, and then I would only have like 2 people that I'd have to do it with, and I was in a much better spot, and then they were screwed. But, yeah.
On that point, how much time are you spending in these weekly or monthly meetings?
The weekly meetings, I always scheduled for a half an hour. I would actually do a half-hour schedule, but never do them in a row. I would do a half hour and then a half hour off in case one had actually gone long. So I've had some meetings where I'd walk in the room and be like, you want to talk about anything? Nah, all right. That was it, right? If we didn't have anything to talk about. But I still made the time. And I wouldn't walk up to their desk and be like, hey, you want to do the meeting? And have them say no on the floor or yes on the floor. I would say, all right, we're going. And go do it in that room. Like, it's just a 5-minute walk away, come back. Everybody expects to have the meeting, so I expect from them to not be in a mental state where they are doing work and are being broken away from it. They should already have broken away from that, so I divorce that concern because of the regularity of those meetings. There was another hand somewhere, I think. No? All right. So, what do we got on time? Let me check the time. Oh, we got time. All right. So, getting better feedback, right? What if you want feedback like all that from your lead, but your lead is just flat out not giving that to you? We're going to go over how I think you can do that and how I have actually done this in my career. So getting feedback is really hard. It can be a challenge for any number of reasons. I don't like calling it good or actionable feedback. I try not to use those words. Actionable means there's something to act on, but it might be too micromanagey. And I don't want feedback to feel like I'm telling anybody on the team what to do, right? So when I get it, I also don't want to feel like I'm being told what to do. And quite honestly, the word good is bad. So I call it effective, right? Effective means that the feedback itself does something. It empowers your team member and doesn't leave anything to interpretation. The only thing that it does leave open is how they are going to act on it. So that way you say, all right, you can give feedback to them on, I think, your communication is lacking. I think you can try to figure out a way to make it so that when you're interacting with this person who you seem to have issues with, there are less confusing things that you're saying to each other. And then let them ask you what you think they can do in order to be better. Don't tell them, because everybody is going to have a different way of solving their own problems. And ultimately, you're trying to build a team that can solve their own problems. So I call those things roadblocks. There are a lot of roadblocks getting that feedback, and I call them roadblocks because you can power through them. Sometimes it takes extra effort. Sometimes you need some more than one solution to topple these roadblocks. Sometimes you need help, and sometimes you need to just blow it all up. So, roadblocks. These are the ones that I have experienced. Most of them I have experienced in my life. There's one that I really haven't. But the first is the lead is new, right? They're either new to the company, and so they don't know the culture yet, or they are new to being a lead at all and still have no idea what the fuck they're doing. But management thinks that they can, so they are a new lead who's just still learning. For example, for me, when I moved from Volition to Fifth Cell, it was a completely different method of being a manager. Volition had a very weird structure where I would have feedback from my team. I would have to give it to a project manager. The project manager would internalize it and then decide how to give it to my team member, somebody who was literally sitting right next to me. I broke the rule all the time because it was dumb, but it still wasn't the best structure, and it didn't make for the best team dynamics. And then I also have watched people become new leads and have a lot to learn and lean on the existing leads group in order to become a better lead. So those things all take time, and you want to make sure that people have the time to learn to be a new lead. But that can be a roadblock to your team actually getting good feedback. Fear of conflict. I have been that person, and I've had leads who are that person. They're afraid to give a tough talk. They just really don't want to tell somebody that they're doing poorly in an area because they think they're too nice or whatever, but they don't realize that by not giving that feedback to the team member, it's not fair to them because they need it in order to grow. And some leads are just intimidated by somebody, either physically or by experience or whatever. They are afraid to give somebody feedback that they need to hear when they feel like they won't actually receive it well. Poor communication. It's Michael Scott, right? They think they're doing a great job, but they're really not. They have feedback, but they forget to tell you. They're super disorganized with their feedback. They think they gave you the feedback, but not in a way that felt like feedback. And mostly they mean well, but they're just not doing a good enough job because they don't know how to give you feedback properly. Time constraints. I mentioned before, when you're a lead, take notes when you're leaving those one-on-ones because you're going to get pulled into other meetings and whatnot. There's that. Leads are in a lot of meetings. There's crunching. I've done this. I've actually done the thing where you asked earlier, why weekly, where I've pushed one-on-ones and things as we were crunching, and it was really easy to do it because we're we got a lot to do, and it was easy to say, hey, you have a lot to do too, right? All right, we're going to totally skip the meeting, and that's it's not good. So you want to a roadblock for getting feedback as a team member. That is a pretty big one, I think, especially in our industry. And this also kind of goes back to as a lead, you should always make time for the team and always do the one-on-ones. So the lead is checked out. They either no longer care about the job and are coasting, or they're leaving, or they have something else going on that you don't know about, but apathy is a real thing. Burnout in this industry is pretty fucking terrible, 5 years, 6 years, whatever the current studies show. And that goes for leads as well. I have burnt out multiple times in my career. I burnt out as a team member, I burnt out as a lead, and I've burnt out just in general. And all of those things, all the burnout, they come, they're very different burnouts from being on the team and being a lead and then being a director. But they do happen, and they do lead to just not caring and wanting to leave. And I have been guilty of being the apathetic lead. And surprise, that's the title of the talk, surprise. It's this feedback that just comes out of nowhere. You're going really well, you think you're doing great, and all of a sudden it's hey, you're really shitty at people. And you're really? I thought everybody liked me, but no. But you don't hear it, until a year later, and by that point everybody hates you. So, well, fuck, right? So the surprise feedback, is really bad. And it's like I said earlier, this surprise feedback, me giving surprise feedback to an employee is what kind of forced me to change how I did it. And then the last one is discrimination. And this one is a trickier subject that we're going to kind of talk about later in a different way, but it can be anything. It can be obviously sexism, racism, misogyny, classism, ageism. It exists. There's discrimination. We all have unconscious biases that we don't know about. So while there are obviously protections, the government has protections against discrimination, we know that they don't always work. So there is that barrier to get past when dealing with getting feedback for your career. All right, so we got to solve these things, right? First solution is patience, right? You want to be patient and help the person if they don't know what they're doing wrong. Their stuff might be going on above them that they can't talk about. It affects their ability to lead. Their manager might actually have feedback for you that conflicts with their assessment of you, and so they're trying to fight on your behalf. So there are times where you do have to kind of wait. Asking, that's my dog. He's cute. He gets everything he wants by asking, but you want to ask. Just ask. Ask, just like a lead builds a rapport with you, you should try to with them. It's not always easy, and it can kind of feel like you're sucking up, but it's not. You want to be yourself, be open to critique, and ask questions. And you want to ask all the questions. Ask them how they're doing. Ask to see the annual review form. Ask how those annual review form metrics track your career progress. Ask how you can improve. Ask how often the studio meets to discuss how employees can improve. Ask if they like ice cream. Just build a conversational rapport with your lead so that when you are starting to ask them about very specific feedback things, it's, oh, this is, Tom, he's here to talk to me about some stuff. This is cool. They'll be more open and receptive to it. Schedule your own feedback, right? If you're not getting the one-on-ones you want, if you can, send a meeting request to your lead and say, hey, I want to talk about how I'm doing. You follow up in email. If they don't respond to email or doing a meeting, turn an interaction with them into kind of a mini one-on-one where you're at the coffee, be like, hey, how do you think I'm doing with that particular task right now? Is there anything I can do better with my communication with the team? Things like that. Just kind of turn interactions with them, not every single one, but some interactions with them into a way to get feedback for yourself. You don't want to overwhelm them, but hopefully this gets the manager more open to realizing, hey, Lori asks for a lot of feedback on her communication. Maybe I should start talking to her about that and see where she feels like she can improve. Be the lead you want. Now, this one is kind of tricky, right? Because you're essentially doing both roles from the killing the annual review section, right? You are being the employee and you're being the lead. And it's really not fair to ask somebody to do a job they're not getting paid for, but it will pay for you later if you start doing the things that you expect your lead to do. I want my lead to give me weekly one-on-ones. All right, I'm gonna go and try and get feedback from them weekly. I wanna know how I can do better at encouraging the rest of the team to do better at their jobs. I'm going to do that and then talk to my lead about how they feel I've done that during the course of the month. And at the least, they should start doing the role that you want of them because they'll see that you're kind of trying to do it for them. And if they don't, you at least have a paper trail of trying. Follow up, right? This one, always follow up. Never assume the lead has any feedback that they've given you or vice versa on their mind. The leads are busy, they have multiple team members, things fall through the cracks. Following up in person and via email at regular intervals will at least remind them that you're there and that you are hungry for that feedback. I've had people, kind of email me even in between those weekly one-on-ones where I had talked to them about something that, I was like, hey, you could probably improve on letting design know when a thing is going to be done. And they'll come to me half a week later and say, hey, I started talking to the lead designer about this character and where it's at. Have they said anything? Do they feel like I'm doing a better job? So, and it's something I wouldn't think about because I'm, thinking weekly I'm going to be talking to them. But having them say, hey, I'm following up with you now makes me feel, all right, when I give them feedback, I need to check in with them during the week to see how they're doing because they really want to fix it and they really want to get better. So it's a thing where the more you follow up as a team member, hopefully the more your lead will realize that is something that will help you. And then finally, skip management. It's a thing. Sometimes you need to talk to your boss's boss. For some people, this is a delicate situation. You might not really feel comfortable doing it. But in all honesty, a good manager will always tell you to feel free to talk to their boss. And I've even encouraged my art directors to make time for the people on my animation team. If anything, it makes them feel more connected to the company because they'll ask the art director things that they don't think I'll know the answers to, like how's the project going overall? What does ownership feel about our prospects down the line? Things where they don't have to worry about asking me during our one-on-ones because the one-on-ones are about them, and they can ask the art director about more studio-wide and bigger picture stuff, and feel, like I said, more connected. All right, so case studies. I'm going to go through, and you can see that the discrimination one is not on there because it's a little bit different. I'm going to go through some case studies on all of those roadblocks and how I have solved these. I see. What are we doing? How are we doing on time? I haven't been timing this. I should probably time it. Oh, we got time. Sweet. We have time for questions. It's going to be awesome. I hope you guys ask them. I'll just dance up here if you don't. So, new lead. We talked about the new lead, right? They're new in general to being lead, or they're new to the company culture. So, first thing is patience, right? I talked about that before. You want to be patient. With a new lead, you want to be patient because they are new. They have no idea what the fuck they're doing yet. They might think that they're an amazing lead because management told them, they could be a lead, but they're not yet. So you want to be patient, allow them to make their mistakes, allow them to kind of ramp up, or I realize I should do one-on-ones, I shouldn't. Chances are the new lead is somebody who was already at the studio and was on the team, so you want to get them give them time to get used to, I am now my friend's boss. That's kind of a hard thing to grapple with, right? And sometimes it's harder for your team than for you. So as a person on that team, being patient with that is a pretty big deal. Don't ask a ton of questions, right? New leads, you don't want to overwhelm them. They're still trying to find answers themselves. So I think just like asking over like things that you need, probably not the best idea to do right now because they're new. You will be able to ask them later, just not right away. Scheduling yourself is the same thing, right? They're probably trying to figure out like how their schedule has completely changed from going to an artist or a designer or programmer on a team to leading a team. So they're trying to get their kind of bearings on when they have time to do certain things, how much time they should spend on those things. So you kind of like trying to shoehorn yourself in there right away is probably not the best idea out of the gate. But being the lead you want, be an example to them. If you feel like there's something you want to see them doing as they're transitioning into a lead, kind of acting that way is super important. I would suggest doing it in a constructive way and not in a I can do this better than you way, because that will not do well for your personal relationships with them or the team. But trying to do something like, oh, I do want to have weekly one-on-ones, so I'm going to start kind of like every week going over and saying, hey, I like this week I did this stuff. Is there anything you think I could do better on it? Just kind of casually saying, hey, this is a thing that I did every week, just to kind of get them used to like, all right, my team members, they want weekly input, they want weekly feedback, they want to hear from me every week. And then following up, right? You follow up with how they're doing. Ask them see how they're doing with the transition to a new lead. See if there's anything that they need from you. A lead has to lean on their team in order to do a good job. The lead is only as good as their team. So kind of following up with them and making sure that they're seeing if there's anything that you can do for them is like, for me, it was a huge thing when I became a lead, like having my team say, all right, dude, we're here for you. Like, let's see what we can do to make this work. And then you don't skip. You're an asshole if you skip over a new lead. I mean, they're new. Let them figure it out. All right, fear of conflict. I curse a lot, I'm sorry. Fear of conflict, right? It's the leads that are afraid to give the tough talk or to give feedback to somebody because they're intimidated by them. All right, ask, right? There's no time for patience, right? By the time you've realized that your lead is afraid to give you feedback, you've needed that feedback. So you're not waiting anymore. You're not being patient with them. But you're going to ask. You're going to be like, look, I am pretty sure that I'm doing a good job, but I feel like maybe you think I don't communicate well. You're kind of drawing it out of them. You don't want to really box them in and like kind of make them feel uncomfortable with giving you the feedback, but kind of like say, hey, maybe I'm not doing a good job with this. Is this okay? And then kind of make them answer. And if they don't have an answer for you, be like, all right, look, I'm gonna follow up with you in a week. Schedule yourself. I'd love for you to think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you think about it so that I, as a team member, can do better for this company and for this project? I don't think being the lead that you want is really going to work here because they're already afraid to give you the feedback for some reason. I think that whatever clouding of judgment they have right now with this and being afraid of it, they're not going to notice the kind of like how you are behaving and like how they feel like, or have them see how you're behaving as a lead and have them kind of like do that as well. Having been the fear of conflict lead and actually worked with them, I don't know how well that'll work. And while I'm talking about all this, these are the things that I have gone through. This is my experience. This does not, fear of conflict. If you want to have patience with somebody, go for it. I just don't suggest it. And then follow up. You're going to notice follow up is a theme. You want to follow up with them constantly. You said, I'm going to follow up and I'm going to schedule something in a week to talk to you about it. And that week, follow up with them. Be like, hey, do you have time to think about that? Make sure they know that you're thinking about it. Because if you do that enough and they don't, you skip over. You go to their boss and be like, look, I've been trying to get feedback. I want to do better. I think I'm doing really poorly at communication. And maybe my poor communication is why I'm not getting the feedback that I need, but I'd like to know how I can improve in order to get that feedback. And that will kind of get your boss's boss to look at you, try to figure out if there's any feedback that they can give you, but also talk to your lead and be like, look, they're asking for feedback. They obviously need it. Can we talk about why they're not getting it? And it might be that lead has been trying to figure out how to give it to you, and they don't know, and they need help from their lead in order to do it. And it's just a thing where they wouldn't have thought to go talk to their lead about doing it because they're afraid of that too. So having their lead kind of coach them through those issues will help you in the long run, hopefully. All right, poor communication. Seriously, this entire thing could come down to poor communication. All of these roadblocks are poor communication. But for the sake of argument, this is just the disorganized, poor communicator who thought that they were giving you feedback the right way. I literally had this at a company I was at recently where I had an issue with another director level person. And without going into details, they were very difficult to work with. I would talk to the CEO about this. And look, this guy, I'm having trouble working with him. Communication is a problem. Scheduling is a problem. All this stuff is a problem. And I, talked to my boss about how I could get better at it. And he would tell me things, just casually in conversation, about how he thought, why we couldn't do certain things with that director person, why we, had to wait things out, all this other stuff. And it just felt to me like he was telling me that we were going to address it eventually and not. And months later, I was pulled into a room with the ownership sitting on one side and me sitting on the other, which is always a great room to walk into, and told that I had not been acting on the feedback that I was given by that CEO during those conversations. And I looked at them and said, that wasn't feedback. That was you telling me not to worry about something and that you were going to take care of it. And they told me, no, this was the way I saw me giving you the feedback. So obviously that was poorly communicated. They thought they were giving me feedback. I had no fucking idea that I was getting feedback. And that you absolutely do not want that. So in cases like that, there's no time for patience because honestly, you have no idea sometimes that you need patience in these situations. You want to ask a lot. In that situation, looking back on it, I would have gone and talked to the CEO more and more. Hey, that stuff we talked about, is there something you want me to do? Is there something I could be doing to help him along? Or is there something that I need to do extra so that, if we do have to remove that person, the hit won't be feeling as hard? Or, should I work with their team or my team better to communicate with them in a different way? Scheduling yourself, talking, I should have forced myself to have more time with my CEO and say, look, I need this feedback. I don't know if I'm handling the situation right. I want to know specifically what are the things I can do better. And then following up, right? Once you have that conversation with the boss or with the lead, making sure, follow up, it's a theme, making sure that you're doing it right, making sure that you're not doing anything that's moving you backwards or affecting the rest of the team in a negative way. Because you could be thinking that you as a team member are actually improving yourself, but you might be damaging other relationships, especially in a situation where your lead is just not talking to you or anybody else. Time constraints, right? Crunch meetings, things like that. Like I said before, as a lead, if you're a lead in here, walk out of those fucking meetings and have your one-on-ones. But I am guilty of time constraints. I'm guilty of using them as an excuse to not have my one-on-ones and not give feedback to my team as to how they're doing. Right, we all have crunch. These are all in meetings. So as a person on a team, I do suggest patience in this particular situation because hopefully your crunch isn't too too long. I mean, sometimes they are. I've been on like 12, 24-month crunches. But being as patient as you can, is pretty important, because that lead might just actually not have the time. They might be getting pulled in a direction by their leads, by publishers, by whoever, and just absolutely cannot like get time to do those meetings. And like I said, I've been guilty of this before. And I've actually, like, my solution to that as a lead was to ask every team member if they were cool with doing them off-site, or, before work or after work, just to at least get that time in. But not everybody has that luxury. People have different things they have to do outside of work. So I wouldn't expect that to be a solution for everybody. And then ask, right? Your lead doesn't have enough time to do one-on-ones with you, but they're definitely going to have enough time to go get coffee. They're going to have enough time to be in the kitchen and, grabbing food or whatever. So when you see them, ask, hey, how am I doing? How am I doing on this one particular thing? Like, how am I doing with working with the design team? How am I doing working with the environment art team or whoever, right? Just get it's like turning them into little mini one-on-one sort of thing. And then again, following up, right? You're going to see them, not as often as you like, because, they might be at their desk for 5 minutes a day, but trying to follow up with them, right? That 5 minutes, don't go over to their desk, as soon as they sit down if they're only there for 5 minutes. Maybe walk by and be like, hey, whenever you got time, if we could talk about some stuff I want to talk about, let them decide, say, all right, yeah, I can make time for you now, or no, we're going to do this tomorrow at this time. Then tomorrow at that time, go and follow up with them. Make sure that they actually do it. And if they don't do it often enough, I probably should have put skip here, but I don't know. Skip's kind of weird in this situation, because chances are if your lead is crunching, you're crunching, and their lead is crunching too. So it's going to be kind of tricky, but maybe I should put a 1 thumb up for skip there. All right, apathy, right? The lead's coasting, they don't care, or they're leaving and they think that they're actually doing a good job, but they're just kind of, I'm gone in a week. You're doing fine. I've had that from a lead before. So obviously no patience. By the time you've realized that your lead is apathetic, there's no more, you've waited long enough, right? You can't wait to get feedback. It's not fair to you, so you're not going to be patient on this. You're going to ask. Apathetic leads, they just need to be pestered. This is, I'm not saying aggressively so, but you want to really push on them to tell you what it is that you need to improve on. And you want to make sure that they know the things that you are doing well. Because, quite honestly, you don't want that to just disappear if they disappear, right? You want to make sure that for you, your personal and professional growth is tracked not by them, but by whoever's going to replace them. And quite honestly, be the lead you want. You might be the person replacing them. If that lead winds up leaving or getting replaced, we always most places try to fill that role from within. So if you, in the absence of your lead being a leader, are the team leader, and if it's something you want to do, you don't have to do this, then you being the lead that you want and kind of supporting your team through all of that is going to help you grow, because you're going to start actually seeing the other side of it, whether you like to or not. And you might actually become the lead if it comes to that, and it's something that you want. And then you will be on the other side of all of this and dealing with all the people asking you shit all the time. And following up, right? Again, follow up. Just always see how you're doing. I'm going to say that for everything. Always follow up. And then for this one, do skip, right? Skip over them if they're not getting you what you need, because you absolutely want somebody to know that you want feedback and are trying to act on feedback that you've gotten. And then almost finally, surprise. You can't really be patient with surprise feedback because it comes out of fucking nowhere, and there's just no waiting for it. It just happens. So if you get surprise feedback from a lead, ask all the questions. Ask exactly what it is and how long it is that this has been going on that you've needed to address it. Once you have done that, schedule yourself. Don't let surprise feedback become a thing that happens all the time. If you notice a pattern with a lead who is constantly giving you surprise feedback, start saying, I want to meet with you every fucking week. I need to know what it is that I'm doing wrong, and see if they're receptive to that. And they damn well better be. And you can tell that this is a very passionate subject of mine. Following up, again, follow up. And this one you have to follow up all the time, because quite honestly, sometimes those leads, they might not even know that they're giving you surprise feedback. It goes back to poor communication where they thought they were giving it to you, but they really weren't. So you want to follow up and always ask how you're doing. And then quite honestly, if it keeps happening, you just got to skip over and be like, I keep getting told that I'm been doing something terrible for 6 months and I had no idea, and I would have fixed it in a day if I had known. So talk to their boss and try and get that kind of worked out. All right, let's see here. All right, we got 10 minutes. All right, I'm gonna go really quick. We got 10 minutes. All right, so discrimination. This one, I don't really have a solution for this one, and I struggled actually with including this at all because I'm a straight white guy, and I have not been affected by discrimination at all. Maybe I will get to the ageism part. I have no idea, but the standard solutions really don't apply to this one very often, if at all. Like, patience isn't going to work. People who are affected by this have fucking waited long enough. So we can't wait. We can't like, I don't really know how we can fix it. But we're already seeing a lot of things happening right now. People are speaking out, people are speaking up, and we have to keep it up. And it's not just the people who are speaking out and speaking up that have to keep it up. It's the rest of us who are in a position where we can actually help fix this, where we can listen, where we can realize that maybe we have been or are discriminating subconsciously. And one of the things that I really hope that people in this room can do today, after all of this and seeing all the solutions, and all the roadblocks that we hit with this one, is to go back to their studio, to their school, to wherever it is that they're going back to, and see how, if you are a person who can help, how you can listen, how you can help, how you can be the person who follows up with people who you feel like need someone to talk to, how you can be an ally to people who might not even realize that they're being discriminated against, and just be someone that people are comfortable with talking to about this so you can help fix it. And if you are being affected by it, I really, really hope that you feel like you're in a situation or in a space where you have someone you can talk to about it so that they can help you or try to help you, or at least be in the room and listen. So I don't know if any of the solutions that I put up here are going to help with that, but I think it's something that we do need to fix. And I know that it's going to take a long time, and I know that it's been taking a long time, but I really hope that everybody here understands that there are going to be roadblocks to people's careers like this that we do need to help each other get through, because in the end we are all in this together, whether we like it or not in some cases. And the more that we can help everybody advance and everybody have an opportunity at a career in this industry, the better this industry is going to be. So, all right. So, results. Elimination of roadblocks, right? These solutions will hopefully get rid of all those roadblocks to you getting effective feedback. And then you will get your effective feedback. Not actionable or good, because good sucks, but effective feedback that will allow you to feel empowered to make the changes that you need to make in order to be a better employee and a better person. Hopefully no more surprises, right? You're going to stay on top of those guys who give you, or women who give you surprises in your feedback, either daily, weekly, monthly, or annually, or whatever. You'll have hopefully more personal and career growth. And quite honestly, one of those solutions that I didn't touch on here, because it is not something that everybody has the ability to do, is having closure, getting the fuck out, leaving the studio that is causing you to not be able to advance your career or advance yourself as an artist or a designer or a programmer, and going somewhere else, and trying to prevent that burnout that we have in this industry. A lot of that goes to being happy. People don't leave companies, they leave managers. And getting away from a shitty manager is often something that a lot of us have to do if we can. Credit where credit is due. That's most of where I found all of the images and everything. You can take a picture of that if you want. I'll leave it up for like about 3 more seconds. I can't count. And that's it.